My dad wants to take out a HELOC on our home as his brother, who just moved to the States from Mexico, wants to get a home. My uncle doesn't qualify for a house on his own as he literally just got here less than 3 months ago. And although he came to the country with around $25,000 saved, that still isn't enough to get a home. So my dad was trying to apply for a home for him, but he was only approved for $300,000, but they would need to make a $50,000 to $70,000 down payment. And obviously that's a lot of money. So now they're considering having my dad get a HELOC on a property. It was bought at $147,000. They owe $80,000, and now it's worth $365,000. I keep telling them it's dangerous to get a loan, especially a HELOC for his brother, but it seems like he doesn't care and is going to go forth with it. That's tough. Okay, so here's the thing. It's outside of your control. There's not much that you can do about that one. All right. What you can to provide as many resources as you can to have a better understanding of how HELOC works. There are a lot of risks to taking out a HELOC. And I don't know his entire situation, but it seems like he already made up his mind. But if you don't know what a HELOC is, it's a line of credit or a type of debt that allows homeowners to use their homes as collateral to tap into the equity of their homes, right? And I would never take out a HELOC for one simple reason. I would be putting my home at risk, and the equity in my home stays where it is until I'm ready to upgrade my next home and use that equity to apply for the next home I purchase. I don't plan on carrying a mortgage going into my 50s because I want to retire with absolutely no debt. And taking out a HELOC is a type of debt I don't want to carry on my FIRE journey. Now, you have to remember that HELOC is like a credit card. So you need to know what the annual fees is during both the withdrawal and repayment periods, okay? So if you end up biting more than you can chew, you're going to end up choking on it for a long time. And don't confuse a HELOC with a home equity loan. A home equity loan is when you borrow the lump sum you're approved for all at once from the equity of your home, and then you'll need to pay back both principal and interest within a time frame, and depending on the term of your loan. So you could have like 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, right? And most lenders will let you borrow up to 80 or 85% of your home's equity. So if your dad's home has an equity of $300,000, then he could borrow up to $240,000 out of that home equity. Now, I'm guessing it's not an investment property because you didn't mention that in the question, but if it is, it does come with stricter requirements and higher interest rates. Now, HELOC comes with 2 periods, okay? Now, one of them, it'll say draw period. The next one is gonna be the repayment period. During the withdrawal period, you typically just make interest-only payments, right? So that's a variable rate like your credit card. So you have to keep an eye on what the Federal Reserve is doing. When they raised rates in 2022, people with HELOC had to increase their minimum payments because the interest rates went up, right? So if you already have a HELOC open right now, you need to have a plan to pay it back in full. The draw period usually lasts about 10 years. Okay. It really depends on your lender, but typically what I see is 10 years. And when your HELOC enters the repayment period right here, you're going to need to have a plan to repay what you borrowed and the interest on top of it. So your interest payment could be a couple $100 a month, but when you enter the repayment period, that payment could go up a lot higher depending on your outstanding balance. You also have to keep in mind that you're going to have annual maintenance fees, transaction fees, and other management expenses. These are the risks people have to think about when they're thinking about tapping into their homes. And what happens if your dad misses his HELOC payments? His lender could potentially foreclose on this house to repay the debt because the lender basically owns his house now, right? So he's going to have a mortgage lender and a HELOC lender on top of it. And the other risk he needs to think about is what happens if his home value goes down. His lender could freeze or reduce his HELOC line of credit if his property value goes down. Just remember that you can only do so much for your dad. You already said that he doesn't care and he's going to go through with it, and maybe send him as many resources as you can to make sure he understands the risks behind a HELOC. If your uncle already has $25,000 saved, can he work a little bit longer to save another $25,000 towards a down payment? Now your dad's going to leverage his house to pay for his brother's house, but he's also going to pay 10% or more in interest on this HELOC, right? For those of you watching this, do not rush to buy a house when you can't afford it. If you're not ready to buy a house, then you're not ready to buy a house. I really hope that everything works out for you.